Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast where people leaders share their side of the story. We talk about the challenges they're facing, how they're addressing them, and what changes they hope to see as the workplace evolves. This podcast is sponsored by All Voices, the all-in-one employee relations platform. Hello, and welcome to HR Voices. I'm your host, Rebecca Taylor, and I'm here with Amy Graves, the CHRO of Bell Techlogix. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm so excited. And for those who are new here, HR Voices is a podcast where we explore real and fabricated, anonymized employee relations scenarios through the lens of experienced HR and people leaders just like Amy. So we're going to evaluate a realistic workplace situation and demonstrate how someone will assess risk, apply judgment, and design practical responses. So our goal here is to reveal how strong HR leaders like Amy think when they're facing ambiguity. And we're not necessarily looking for a single correct answer because we often don't have that luxury in HR. There often is not one single correct answer. So this is kind of just talking through that and, seeing how we make decisions.
Yeah, that sounds great. I feel like that's exactly what it is, right? HR is always operating in the gray. So here we go.
I feel like that should be like our new palette should be like gray, just like the gray of everything.
Honestly.
Okay, so for your scenario today, Amy, we're calling it the pay transparency mandate. So a state enacts a new law requiring employers to include salary ranges in all job postings. The company's current practice is to post wide ranges. So for example, like 60K to 120K, depending on experience, to maintain negotiating flexibility. Employees discover significant pay disparities when they see the ranges for their roles. Several file complaints alleging they're being underpaid compared to new hires. Others demand raises to reach the top of the posted range. So this is a fabricated scenario, but I feel like this is also just the diary of a CHRO these days.
Honestly. Yes. So real. Yeah. My very first thought is when you said they posted a wide range to give them flexibility. So my thought is, well, is that actually the range? Right? Is it actually the range? Because 60 to 120K is not an actual range for a position, right? That range is 100%. Anybody working in comp or HR would know that that's not an appropriate range for any job level. So that right there is creating some uncertainty, and certainly, as an employee going to look at that and say, that's a range is 100%, and ranges should not be that. They should be, 40 or 50% or whatever. They're probably not going to think that. They're going to have, how does this impact me types of thoughts, right? Rightfully so. But I guess, again, that my first thought is, well, that doesn't even sound like a legitimate range to begin with. So let's start there, right?
Let's really consider, right? Because, you're right, because it's not a real range. And if an employee is in this job and they're making 75K, like they're higher than the lower end, but they're like, wait, you're going to pay up to $120,000 for someone to do the same job?
Yeah.
What the heck? Like, really? Rightfully so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say I'd be thinking the same thing. And I think that's the very first, maybe that's not the first problem. There's probably a problem before that, and I'll get to that. But that is the problem inherently with posting a wide range that's not the true range of the position. Number one, it's just not honest. First of all,
Yeah.
let's start there.
Yeah.
Number two, and by the way, the whole point of posting it is for pay transparency. So if pay transparency is the reason we're posting ranges, and you're posting a range that is not legitimate, then you're negating the whole purpose of putting the range out there to begin with, it because it's not transparent or true or valid, right? So that's a point. But I guess I would rewind a little bit and say, anytime, yes, pay transparency laws are, enacted. They're continuing to grow. And I think that we've got to be thoughtful about, as we post ranges, we should absolutely expect our employees to be seeing those. And we hopefully have done some sort of an audit previously. And by the way, the audit of our internal pay practices should not happen just because, oh no, we have to put our pay ranges in a job posting now. We should
Yeah, you
be
should be doing it anyway.
be doing that anyways. Absolutely. We should be walking that analysis already to make sure even if you just think about it from, from the perspective of we want to make sure that there's no discrepancies for gender or
Mhm.
race or disability or whatever, right? We need to be looking at our pay practices internally and our equity way before pay transparency started to kind of become a thing, right? But let's just say we weren't doing that, which by the way, for the
Mhm.
record, at my company, we were and are. But I
Good.
want to say, right. But I want to say that, let's just say that, for whatever reason that you as a company, you weren't doing that prior. I hope before you are putting a range out there to apply or, comply, I should say, with pay transparency practices, that you're at least doing it right before that, right? Where you're saying, okay, we know we're going to put pay ranges out there for the whole world to see, and that whole world includes our employees. We should probably just take a quick look internally and make sure, that we are paying our employees fairly across the board and appropriately for the range. I guess there's is do the audit first before you even put the pay range on there. Number one, and number two, based on the scenario you just described, I wouldn't call that an appropriate range to begin with. The whole
Yeah.
point of pay transparency is not to give us these huge wide ranges so we can negotiate salary. That negates the whole purpose of pay transparency, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's true because it's like, it's something like this, the scenario like this, where it starts off with the state enacts a law requiring pay transparency. That's why they're posting this.
Mhm.
So I remember I was working in New York when New York mandated pay transparency. And I was, I was in HR and I had, I was doing recruiting. And so all the things that sort of, this sort of weighs into. New York was one of the first states to do it, so we were kind of like figuring it out as we went. And you get time. Like they announce that the law is passed and it's like a year before it's actually put into place. So my question here is what were you doing the whole time between when it was announced that the law was passed to when the law actually went into effect? Because that's the perfect time to just get your house in order because that's where the risk becomes, right? Because now you've got like the double risk of there could be different parameters that explicitly state that the range has to be within a certain percentage for it to be considered, technically transparent according to the
Mhm.
law.
Yep.
But then you also can have a whole other can of worms with discrimination, like why are certain people paid more for the same job than others? Like all these
Mhm.
legitimate questions that you can file it under just employee grievances, but it's usually not just that. It usually is that there's something that's going on internally that needs to be fixed. And this is like the perfect time. That to me is the risk is like how far back do these issues go? Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because what pay transparency does, it potentially reveals a problem that you already have, an
Mhm.
inequality in pay that you already have internally. So again, if you think about go back to the auditing, if you're not looking to your point, you've had a whole year to prepare for this. What have you done in that year? Some of the steps that we should be taking in that year are again, if we weren't taking them already as we should be, is looking at pay inequities internally. So hopefully companies have gone through that exercise already. So that way, when this new law pops up and they're like, oh, that's going to be happening in 12 months. Hey, we're good to go. We've already taken a look at our pay practices, right? Our comp strategy is strong. Our ranges are good. We've taken a look to make sure there's like, no, just no problem. We're ready for that law whenever it goes into effect, right? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's not been the case for a lot of employers, right? They
Yep.
weren't paying close enough attention to that type of stuff. And then when the pay transparency law state to state is enacted, it's a, crap, hurry up, we've got to hurry and do this. And then this is the other thing that happens is when you have 12 months, you could start making some small adjustments, right? Some stair
Mhm.
steps of pay. Let's be honest, we're running a business. Making pay increases, especially if there's a lot to make, it has an impact. It has an impact on your margins, on your bottom line, on all those things. It really does, and we understand that. So you've got 12 months to hopefully kind of stair step some of that, But if you've waited till the last minute, you're in a
You're going
pickle.
to get issues. Yeah, you're going to get issues. And even as you're kind of, if we're going deeper into this scenario here too, and what could happen, like there's risk
Mhm.
in, possibly just very unlevel, and inequitable payment practices that currently exist that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
So who are some of the people that you're going to want to talk to? Because I'm also like, yes, there's the HR side of this that we want to talk about, but I don't think HR is the only one who's in charge here. Because I'm like, where
Absolutely.
were the managers? Where were the managers communicating all this? Where are the managers like stepping in and looking at their employees' salary, right? So who else do you want to talk to?
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly managers, right? Because managers are the ones that are closest to the employees that could have grievances, first of all. But even I think a step beyond that is, department or operational, your leaders that are managing the P&L. Because trust me, those are the ones I think sometimes what employees don't think about is, hey, it's just a little bit of a raise. It's just a few $1,000s. Yes, for you. But when you've got hundreds of employees, we could be talking millions of dollars. We could be talking a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not small stakes. Understandable that managers or leaders, people that are responsible for their P&Ls for their departments are not, just jumping on to say, "Oh, sure, make it all happen today." I understand that. Which is
Yeah,
why we have time. That's why there's
right.
a that's why there's like a, "Hey, you've got some time to get your act together here." So I think that that's important. Absolutely, it's those leaders because they're gonna of course, good leaders wanna pay their people appropriately. So, number 1, I wish we all had great leaders at all companies,
Yeah,
but that's not
yeah,
always the case, right? But I like to think that most leaders wanna do the right thing by their employees, first of all. But they also have a bottom line and likely a margin target to meet as well. And so big swooping comp changes are exactly that. They're big and they make an impact. So you do have to kind of manage through those. Sometimes you can't do all those changes right at once. It's HR's, I think, responsibility to provide some education and guidance. Our leaders have to be making some tough decisions. What I mean by tough is, you know, we got to do the right thing despite what that could mean to our margin, right? Or
yeah.
our bottom line. And that could be a tough conversation to have. I mean, what other departments do you bring in? Certainly finance, obviously, right? Potentially legal if it gets to that point. But I think that if you've got a really strong kind of, leadership and HR function, hopefully you don't even need to go down that path, right?
Yeah. You want to flag it like only if you absolutely have
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. Yep.
Because
And
there
and
is a
even if
difference between employees claiming discrimination and actual discrimination, right?
no
Sorry
doubt
to cut
about
you
it.
off, but like
No,
we have to
yeah.
figure out if that's actually happening before we even raise our hands with legal.
Absolutely, because the truth is, there are the reason behind the range. There's a lot of reasons that are valid that somebody might still be at the very bottom of that range, right? In the beginning of the range, generally speaking, and there are some exceptions here, right? For extremely like critical skills that are hard to find. Sometimes you see a little bit of this in tech or whatever, but the bottom of the range is an entry level, right? You might not have a lot of experience, and so you're probably not going to be 100% proficient right out of the gate. That
Right.
mid-range is you got it. You're doing your thing. You're hitting on all cylinders. You've got your experience. You're right in that middle of the range. And then the top of the range, generally speaking, high performance, very tenured people that have spent time moving through the range if they've been in that job for a long time. So there are some defendable reasons, right? Why somebody would be getting paid less in the range than somebody else that's getting paid more. Oftentimes, especially if you've already done those kind of audits on the front end, and if somebody came to me, I would in my company, I'd feel really comfortable defending, But I
Right.
understand not all companies are, and I think that hopefully you don't have to pull in legal for those types of situations because you've
Yeah.
handled that stuff on the front end and you're not kind of worrying about, ooh, have we done something wrong here?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that they should make more money. I mean,
Right.
everybody,
I think we
everybody.
should all be making more money. Why not?
We
Right.
should pay me more. We all want to make more money, and I get that, but that doesn't mean that there's something illegal happening because you're not farther in the range that is as much as you'd like to be, and I think
That's the
that's
key.
key.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in a related sort of like thread, what do you think is the biggest mistake HR teams make in situations like this?
Mm-hmm.
And I say related because I have thoughts, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear yours too. I mean, a couple, right? One is just lack of preparation, which we've already talked about. I think that's a big one. And so to me, that's probably one of the biggest ones. Two, let's not jump to conclusions and think that anything that we've already have in place, the ranges we have are wrong. I think employees can get emotional and we care about employees, so we want to fix things and we want to take care of them. But let's not assume that we're doing so we, the business, are doing something wrong. I think that, most of those decisions we can defend. And I think that, um, HR should be able to recognize that. I also think, it's HR's responsibility we got to be coaching our managers on how to have better conversations around pay. I think
Hmm.
that that's a struggle, especially kind of
Yeah.
frontline, first line managers that I all the time. HR told me, or HR said I
Yeah.
can't.
They deflect.
They
Yep. Yeah.
deflect,
It's like,
right?
I
So
don't control the salaries of your team, believe it or not. You do. It's your
yeah,
P&L.
absolutely, absolutely. But I do believe that that's because they don't feel equipped enough to have those conversations and be really. They can't have those robust conversations because maybe we as a business haven't taught them to do that. So there's a little bit of responsibility there on us to do that. It's the manager's responsibility too. I love it when a manager says, "I did some research. I when they take it upon themselves to say, I want to be a better leader, and so I need to become more equipped and informed about how compensation works. Can you help me with that?" Oh my gosh, like, can you just send every
Me too.
manager that way, my way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, oftentimes what we see is managers saying, "I don't really know. Go talk to HR. I'm not really sure. HR made me do that, or they told me I couldn't." I can't tell you how many times we've heard that in our HR
All the
careers
time.
over the last 25 years. Like,
All the time. Yeah.
HR won't let me. It's,
Yeah. It's
it's
like,
not
I'm
my.
sorry. I'm not here to police you. That's not my
No,
job.
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest mistakes is assuming that people won't notice because,
Yes,
like, the way this scenario is written, and I understand that it's fabricated, but I've also feel like I've seen this movie before.
no doubt.
It's like, we understand that we have to post the pay transparency. We're just doing this to be compliant. So technically, maybe the range that we put up there is technically compliant with the law, but they assume they might be assuming that people aren't going to notice that the ranges are up. They're not going
Mhm.
to notice what the ranges are. And they assume that, if you're assuming that people aren't going to care, then
Big
that's like the
mistake.
biggest mistake. Yeah. Yeah.
Big
Because
mistake.
like, the whole thing to me is giving ostrich theory. It's giving like, I know this is coming, but I'm just going to pretend it's not happening until I have to deal with the mess later, which can happen a lot in HR when you're juggling a lot of things. Sometimes it's like, I don't even have the bandwidth to get ahead of this. I'm just going to clean it up when it all
Right.
explodes.
I get that.
I'm not condoning that, but that's just
Yeah.
sometimes like the
It's the
reality of the situation. But this is a big one that, I don't think needed to that should not have just been HR's responsibility, but unfortunately HR is responsible for cleaning it up.
yeah, that
Like, I
that
don't
te
know, did
that te
managers talk to their employees at
honest
all? But yeah.
that tends to happen, right? It does tend to happen where HR gets either, because it's easier for the manager to just say, "Oh, go to them, talk to them and figure it out."
Right.
Or, just the lack of education. But, that's not just as you know, Rebecca,
Yeah.
certainly not just a pay thing. I feel like
Yeah.
that happens in a lot of
Oh, yeah.
performance and other types of areas of our
100%.
our business too. Mhm.
Yeah, all the things that we end up having to deal with when it's just like, I have to talk to you about your performance. I have to give you feedback about a conversation, you had. Or
Yeah.
it's kind of funny just how those skills are just not flexed the same way as they
Yeah.
probably, not probably, as they actually should be. And there's a lot of managers that are kind of deflecting to AI right now to give people feedback, but that's probably a whole other scenario to to sort of
Yeah.
like uncouple.
I was gonna say that's a whole nother podcast, Rebecca.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of that happening too. And hey, listen, AI
Yeah.
is a great tool. You're going to find a lot of great information, through your
Yes.
chatbots or AI tools, all the things. So I use them daily, so I'm certainly not against it. But AI should help us, give us options, should not be decision makers or give you the please don't copy and paste and read from it, when you're talking with your
Yeah.
managers. Like, no way.
Yeah. My new analogy is like AI can be like makeup. It enhances what you currently have.
That's right.
So it's like you have to have the skills that can enhance what you have. But if you're trying to like, reinvent some skills you don't have, you're going to be going down a whole different rabbit
Yeah.
hole.
Please don't do that.
But yeah, don't do
Yeah.
that.
Don't do that.
So there's a lot of competing pressures here, right? Because there's the external view to the market. There's,
Yeah.
just a wide range posted from the market. I would look at that and I'd be like, either they're going to lowball me or this is a role, let's say that is the real range. And I look at it as like, oh, that's a job that I'm expected to be in for a long time. Like doing the same thing, maybe getting incremental raises year over year. Maybe there's no growth for me from here. Like there's
Right.
so many different competing pressures. So you've got the external side, you've got the legal risk, how do you weigh them?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's tough to weigh it because what you're really doing is weighing the financial impact to the business and employees' perception and a candidate's perception. Here's the thing. Our fear in HR or as a business with posting a range isn't it's not I really, again, maybe this is like me Pollyanning a little bit, but like I really want to believe that the whole reason we've been a little nervous to do that is because we don't want to miss out on a great candidate that would see our range and say, "Ooh," right? I mean,
It's
I
true.
think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of fear there. What if they saw our range and, they said, "Oh, 120 is the cap. I got to have 150. I'm not applying." But what if
I'm
that
not even going to
candidate
apply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if that candidate was had a very, like, niche critical skill or a level some kind of experience that was even beyond what we asked for, but, ooh, we knew we could use that in our company. Like, those are the kinds of things that I think about that from that perspective, it's like, we don't wanna miss out on that candidate. So, putting a range out there is a little scary for that. Now, the flip side is, yes, there are companies that we wanna pay the least amount we can possibly pay. But
Right.
honestly, companies that are doing that, and if those companies are scared to post their ranges because they were hoping to get away with paying a little bit less, you're just shooting yourself in the foot because all you're doing is bringing a candidate in that's going to work for you for 12 months and gain a little bit of experience. And then they're going to take that experience and go get paid what they're worth and what they can go get somewhere else. And you've been the quickest stepping stone ever for them in their career. If that's what you want to do, more power to you as a company. You're going to have a lot of turnover. Turnover costs you money, a lot of training hours. If you have I assume you'd have clients, it's gonna impact your clients. There's just too many reasons to not go down that path. So,
Yeah.
the range itself is meant to be helpful to candidates. It's not meant to be hurtful to companies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to put it. And it kind of is about when you think about it as power dynamics too. Like previously, before salary ranges were posted, it was up to the candidate to start the negotiation, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
what are you looking for in a salary? Or it used to be, what do you make? Or what have
Ugh,
you made before?
we're not
And,
asking that
you know,
anymore. You better not be.
yeah, we're not. No, yeah, no, we're not. But like that's how it started, right? That's what it used to
That's
be. And it
right.
used to
Yes,
be up to
yeah.
the candidate to be the one to put that number out there first.
Mhm.
That's twisted, right? Because it's like they're the ones who need a job, who are considering other opportunities, whatever it is. So this kind of evens the playing field, or at least puts the ball in the
Mhm.
court of the place with more power.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a
Yes.
candidate's market,
Yeah.
you could walk in and you could say like, I want this and I'm not going to move for anything less than this. And you could probably still do that in a lot of
Mhm.
places and the company can decide what to do or not do with that. But salary transparency was specifically, to drive more equity in the way that roles are paid and more transparency for the average person who needs a job, right? We're not all Don Draper walking into an ad agency saying, pay me $1 million
That's
and here's all the
right.
things that I can do, right? Most of us are just like, we're just trying to make a living here. And
Yes.
that's where a lot of it comes from.
Yep. Funny story. This is actually embarrassing now that I have been.
This is a safe space.
I've had some life experience now, but I will never forget my very first job. Not my first job. I worked as a teenager, but my very first like real job. The recruiter. I am dating myself here. This is 2030. It's a long time ago. Okay. I remember they offered me $20,000. And I was like, for annual, that's annual salary, by the way. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, $20,000. Like, I asked the recruiter, no kidding, the recruiter that's working with me, offering me the job. I asked the recruiter, what should I do? Should I negotiate? And she was so sweet. She was like, sure. Yes, you should negotiate. And I'm like, okay, what should I negotiate with? What should I ask for? I'm asking the actual recruiter.
It's like,
Listen,
give
please
me a number.
give me a number. She said, 21,000. I said, deal, 21,000. That's what I want to negotiate. Oh my gosh, you guys, please don't ever do what I did. I can't believe I've made it this far in life knowing it after telling that story. But my whole point in that is like, oh, the burden of salary negotiations. I'm going to tell you, for the last 10 years of my career, I don't like it. I will not get into a negotiation with salary. I just won't do it. I'm going to come to you I'm not saying I won't negotiate ever, but my whole point in saying that is I'm going to come to you with the best I'm never going to hide comp. We're going to talk about comp from the beginning. This is my range, or this is where I'm at. I'm looking to offer you $80,000, but if I'm at the top, if I'm like, look, the 80 is the best I can give you. 120 is the best I can give you. I don't like to negotiate. I want to like give you the strongest offer I know my company can give you. And then let's keep it moving let's get it going, right? That's
Yeah.
acceptable to you, let's move. And if it's not, then I understand, and you got to do your thing and we got to go do our thing, right? I don't like to be in a position where, can you give me 82? No, but I can give you 81.5. Like, no, I'm not going to
Yeah.
do it.
That's
Well, I'm
just
not going to.
pennies at that point.
Are you kidding me? We're not getting into that battle. Like, it's just not worth it. Listen, if you're going to make an offer, if this is a candidate you really want, come with a strong offer. That tells them out of the gate, we want you, right? And that makes them
Yeah.
feel good. Why are we negotiating over $1,000? It's just wild
Yeah.
behavior, right?
Yeah. So there are a lot of sort of takeaways too, just in terms of like what can happen even after, like when you're in the negotiation phase, post this, this whole scenario too. Cause, if you're an employee who takes, this job that's posted, that has this like wide salary range, and let's say, that you're at the higher end of things, then you're kind of walking in. It sounds like in this specific scenario, it sounds like there hasn't been pay transparency historically at the organization. So now there's like this weird expectation of, am I getting paid a lot more than the people around me? Does that make them hate me?
Yeah.
How does that impact like my experience here? And
Yeah.
those are sort of like the ripple effects of something like this, right? Like it's never just one little issue. It's always sort of how it affects everybody's ability to just
Mm-hmm.
do their best work. And
Yep.
like, some of the patterns that I see in situations like this is like this one specifically is pay transparency is maybe not anymore, but at the time was considered radical and very progressive and very
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like, why would you do that? Now it's becoming standardized, right? Because
Right.
it's becoming sort of a thing that's sort of going state by state. So the pattern that you see is something is, seen as progressive. The more, quote unquote, more progressive states will adopt it first. Like California, New York are
Right.
usually some of the first. You
Front
got
runners.
Colorado, Illinois, like they'll kind of like sprinkle in there, right? But like you as HR, you can't ignore things that are happening outside of your own state, or you
Mm-hmm.
can't ignore things that seem like too progressive and will never come here, because if you're ignoring that, then by the time something like this comes to your organization, you are going to be caught from behind. You're not
Yeah.
paying attention to how other organizations did it better. And that's not great for your culture. It's not great for your people. And it's also it could just open you up to a lot of risk too, because you're going to be less informed in how to make it, effective in your own company.
Absolutely. And I think there's some like additional thoughts there too. One, like, we're in a global economy.
Yeah.
Unless you're a small business, there's not a lot of places that are only operating just solely in their one little spot. Talent is
Yeah.
everywhere. It's important that we're paying attention to what's happening in other states around us, even if you don't have an employee there, because just because you don't now doesn't mean you won't in 6 months, right? So
Exactly.
we've
Yeah.
really got to be paying attention to that stuff. And by the way, it's not just pay transparency. It's the same thing with, like, if you think about drug screening, like those kind of
Yeah.
the pre-employment drug screenings. I mean, what was it, like 4 or 5 years ago, New York passed a law. Not only did they pass a law about you not being able to test for marijuana, but it was you can't make a tangible employment decision. There was employment protections in there for New York. Lots of states are moving in that direction. So we just have to be mindful of that. No matter where you are, we got to be paying attention in HR, because that's our role, is paying
Yeah.
attention to what's happening from a kind of that could impact our people, therefore our business, and not just the state we're working in, but in the states around us. Because to your point, Rebecca, if it's happening in California, New York now, and Illinois, I mean, I'm in Indiana. It's coming. It might be a little slower.
It'll get there.
But it will be coming. And we need to be
It'll get there.
prepared. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I want to, so I know it's funny because I like, we're at time, but I feel like there's so many more things that we can dive into with this because
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's also very timely with so many people interviewing for jobs right now, out of work, kind of trying to navigate this. And right now it's very much an employer market, right? Because that's just the truth of where we are now, but everything is
Right.
cyclical. So I'm always excited to see how these laws kind of get, or these policies sort of change as the tables are turned. Because it will, they will turn, it'll happen. But like, as sort of our closing question, what's one assumption about HR that you think needs to be challenged?
Just
I
one?
know. Just one.
Just
Just one.
one?
You could do like 1.5 if they're related.
Yeah. I think the one assumption that's not even just related to what we're talking about today is that HR is the sole responsible function for all things people, pay, performance related. It's probably the thing that drives me the most crazy, and gives me also a lot of passion to kind of help educate. And we are here to do that. We are here to educate and help inform, and not to tell you no, but to explain the risk. And then the business leaders get to make those decisions with, of course, our input and our guidance and our advice on how much risk we as a company are willing to accept. So they think we have a lot more power than we actually do sometimes, to be honest, right? In terms of line kind of those frontline employees, it's HR, it's the business. It's the business. We get to help deliver the message, and I will carry it, as the champion if that's what I need to do, of course. Employee, we have a little, not as much power as you think in terms of making those business decisions that could impact you. And by the
Yeah.
way, I'm an employee too, and those decisions often impact me as well. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That's
Yeah.
sometimes, I think, forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I love that you said that because I think that it is very true where, sort of people think that HR is up there like making all the decisions and telling the
Mm.
CEO like, yes. It's like that's really not our style. Like we work, like you said, we're employees too. And it's like most decisions are a result of multiple people weighing in and
Yeah.
ultimately just getting to be the right thing. It's like, just like HR in business, there's so many gray areas. There's never going to be a
Yeah.
scenario where everyone is going to be happy with everything.
Right.
And you decide what to do with that, right?
That's right.
As the employee and as, just someone who's here.
You got it. You got it. I think at the end of the day, this whole, HR is walking in the room, HR is not your friend. You can't trust HR. It's unfortunate because I think that it's actually quite the opposite if you have a really good HR team and function in your company. We are your advocates. You might not know this, but we are in the rooms advocating for you. We're also advocating for the business. We know we need to do that. That's really important. There's no harder job, in my view, than balancing the needs of the business and the employee. And that is our job. I'm never going to walk around like the compliance police. You will never see it. It won't happen. Not under my watch. I know people like to think that that's all we do is walk around with a handbook and beat people over the head with it. Please, no, don't do it. And by the way, HR practitioners, if that's you, just stop. I mean, reach out. Me and
There's
Rebecca
other
would love to
ways.
guide you. Yeah, there's other ways.
There's a better way.
There's a better way. That's right.
No, that's so true. And thank you, Amy, for being here, for sharing all your wisdom and for having this chat. I think there's so many good takeaways from this that, I think that anyone who's listening can really kind of, sort of apply to, maybe a current situation that you have. If you have any questions for Amy, you can find her on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Or you can find me. I can connect you to her. And thank everybody for listening. And thank you, Amy, for being here, and hope you all have a great day.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Rebecca.